NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, teen dating violence. A local survivor shares how she moved on and what others can do to help. Then, we ask Linda Holmes, host of the Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast on NPR, about her third book, Back After This. And sharing stories from the cloud. We explore the nebulous and sometimes cumulus theme of the upcoming performance of Untold Stories. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or reach out on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A dozen world leaders are in Ukraine's capital today to mark 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv. Ukraine's president is seeking to unite European leaders as the Trump administration moves toward restoring U.S. ties with Russia.
Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Zelensky said he's planning a European summit related to ending the war. Zelensky says he wants a European representative at the negotiating table, along with the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. He also said he is still working on a deal with the United States that could exchange hundreds of billions of dollars of critical raw materials for security guarantees. He rejected earlier versions of the deal because the terms would leave Ukraine deeply in debt. He said, I am not signing something that 10 generations of Ukrainians will have to repay. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
Germany held national elections over the weekend. The mainstream Conservative Party won the largest share of votes. The party's leader, Friedrich Merz, says he'll quickly form a government. But Esme Nicholson reports in Berlin, a far-right German party got the second largest share of the votes.
Merz's Christian Democrats will be able to uphold what is often referred to as the firewall against the far-right Alternative für Deutschland party, or AfD, by partnering with just one party, according to the provisional election result. AfD leader Alice Weidel says that Merz must respect the will of the electorate and take up her offer to govern together. Merz is expected to seek a coalition with outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats. Merz told voters on Sunday night that the world is not waiting for Germany and that his top priority is to unify and strengthen Europe, calling Vice President J.D. Vance and Elon Musk's support of the AfD as outrageous as interventions from Moscow. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
Jury selection starts today in North Dakota in a lawsuit filed against environmental activist group Greenpeace. The company, Energy Transfer, is suing Greenpeace for $300 million. This is over environmental protests led by Native Americans nearly a decade ago against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Officials at the company claim Greenpeace and other activists conspired to hurt the company. NPR's Jeff Brady reports Greenpeace says this lawsuit is intended to block free speech.
Greenpeace calls this a SLAP suit, and SLAP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. Essentially, a wealthy company takes a less wealthy critic to court, forcing them to spend time and money defending themselves rather than protesting. Greenpeace says the goal here is to win and dissuade other companies from filing cases like this.
NPR's Jeff Brady reporting. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's now 9:04. The Jaguars have a new general manager. Team owner Shad Khan announced James Gladstone's appointment last week. Gladstone previously worked as the director of scouting for the Los Angeles Rams. In a statement, Khan praised Gladstone's vision, ideas, communication, as well as his keen understanding of the NFL and the Jaguars. Tampa-based mining company Mosaic is looking at injecting phosphate wastewater underground in the state. Chris Young has more.
The Tampa Bay Times reports they are considering phosphate wastewater injection underground in Riverview, New Wales, Bartow, and Plant City. The Center for Biological Diversity is suing the EPA for approving Mosaic's push to use phosphate in building roads. And staff attorney Reagan Whitlock says putting the wastewater underground is a bad idea, too.
The idea that we should be injecting our radioactive hazardous waste into underground wells in a state that prohibits underground injection of hazardous waste precisely because of our karst geology and the permeability of our soils is a terrible idea.
The Department of Environmental Protection and Mosaic will be holding a public meeting in Plant City to hear public feedback. I'm Chris Young.
It's going to be a dreary day of weather here in Northeast Florida with gray skies and rain in the forecast. Mainly rain will fall south of the I-10 corridor. Highs will reach the lower 60s later on this afternoon. The rainfall continues into the evening and overnight hours, with lows eventually getting down into the lower 50s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, supporting creative people and effective institutions committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information is at macfound.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, what friends and parents should know about teen dating violence. We talk to a local advocate and a violence survivor about resources and ways to respond. Later in the program, the guru of all things pop culture. We talk to the host of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour about her new book. But first, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and here to discuss it, I'm joined by Stephanie Brown, Director of Community Education at Hubbard House. Good morning, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you for being here. We're also joined by Estelle, who experienced abuse for many years from her partner, starting when she was in high school, and has gone on to become an advocate for teens and women in similar circumstances. Good morning, Estelle.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Estelle, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to this advocacy, and if you're comfortable talking about it, sort of what your experience was in high school?
Oh, totally. So I came to the advocacy through Stephanie in the Hubbard House. My abuse started as an emotional type of abuse. We were in high school, we were in different schools, and he insisted that we spend every waking moment together if we were not in school. And it was emotional. It was pressure to do what he wanted us or me to do. And it was drinking. It was, hanging out with people who I normally would not hang out with, and attending parties and, different things that I was not comfortable with, but because we were together, I did.
Were you the same age?
We are, yes.
Yeah.
We were, sorry.
Yeah. And so this pressure, did you recognize it as pressure, or did it feel like just attention and flattery? How did you initially interpret it?
That's exactly right. It was not pressure. It was attention, and he was a football player, and it was, prestige, and people recognized you, and you were noticed, and my self-esteem was low, and I wanted to be noticed, and he helped me be noticed by being with him. And if we weren't together, they would know who I was.
And so as he's pressuring you, did you find yourself aware that these are choices that maybe you didn't want to make, or were you sort of lulled into thinking, this is my decision?
Yeah, exactly. That this was my decision after the initiation of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. After, time and time, you finally give in and like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. That's right. Yeah. I feel comfortable.
Yeah. And so you were dating him for some time. You mentioned drinking, but there was also some sexual activity that was sort of initiated by him that led to a pregnancy.
A teen pregnancy. Yes. Yes, definitely. The unprotected sex and, led to that. And then it was, are you really pregnant? Yeah, I'm really pregnant. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we didn't we actually didn't tell or disclose the pregnancy for months. I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 months pregnant.
So there's some other elements, and this is a story that continues into adulthood. But Stephanie, I kind of want to bring you into the conversation. As you listen to it, Estelle, are there certain touchstones that you hear and you recognize from the story of teen dating violence?
Absolutely. And it starts with realizing that teens often don't know in the moment that what they're experiencing is abuse or is violence. Estelle spoke about a lot of the manipulation and the jealousy that he was using. I'd venture to guess that any of your peer group, your friends, were looking, for example, at, him always wanting her by his side. Well, that's sweet. That's loving. That's something that I would want in my relationship because when you're a teenager, you may not realize how that's a tool of control. And so if you're hearing that not only from that abusive partner, but also from all of the peers in your network who don't know better, it can be really challenging for teens in those moments to step back and say, I don't feel safe. Or all those times my gut told me that I don't want to do this. I know he's saying these things. I know it's leading to these outcomes, but I need to trust my gut. It's a hard thing to do.
And how can teens recognize that and distinguish between sort of a healthy, because we know that, when relationships begin, people do want to be together all the time. And it is, something that can be hard to divorce from a sense of control or something that is, being forced upon you because it is, as Estelle experienced, it can be affectionate. It can feel flattering. How do teens in their own mind know? How can they tell?
So every behavior has degrees of behavior. So if you take spending time together as an example, in a healthy relationship, absolutely you want to spend time with your partner wants to spend time with you, but you also can define yourself outside of the relationship. And you're spending time with your friends and with your family and doing activities that maybe your partner doesn't enjoy, but that you enjoy. When your relationship starts to turn unhealthy, then you're noticing that your partner is guilting you away from spending time with other people. Or they're trying to justify when they monopolize your time. They're saying things like, I worry about your safety when you're not with me. Or I get so nervous that some other guy is going to flirt with you if you're not with me. So they're trying to make you feel bad about spending time anywhere than other than by their side. And so that's one of those degrees, right? That behavior is starting to escalate and signals to us that maybe this is starting to get unhealthy. The difference is, can you look at that partner and say, look, I want to have my time alone. I value this time separately. And if that partner is willing to change, then, maybe there is still that hope of a healthy relationship. But if you feel like you would be in danger if you talk to them about it, if you feel like they may react negatively, or if they make promises to change and then never do, then that unhealthy is starting to escalate to potentially abusive.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to a survivor and an advocate about the problem of teen dating violence. If you've had a personal experience that you'd like to share, or you'd just like to join the conversation, you can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. Stephanie, there are a number of studies that show the impact on U.S. teens of teen dating violence. There are a number of studies that the CDC has done. They've found 1 in 3 teens have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional abuse from a dating partner, that 1 in 12 have experienced physical dating violence, and that 1 in 5 girls has reported sexual violence in the last year, with 1 in 10 saying that they've been forced to have sex. Given that fact, and I should say some of the data on the CDC site has actually been sort of modified or somewhat less accessible because of the president's directive, but that information is still available on other websites. Given the status and the fact that this is so kind of common, why is it overlooked so often?
Well, you just put a lot of numbers out there, and I'm going to give one more, which is, a study found that about 80% of parents either don't realize that teen dating violence is a problem or don't believe that it is. And so, despite how common it is, if you're a parent or a mentor or a coach and a teen in your life comes to you and says that they're in a relationship, your likely response is, oh, young love, it won't last. Or, oh, it's just a phase. Or they won't know this person 5 years down the road. Adults sometimes have that tendency not to take the experience of teens seriously. And so, because of that, teens may not feel comfortable coming to the adults in their lives and saying that they need help and support because they don't know if they're going to be judged, if they're going to be dismissed, and I mean, family can have such an immense impact in building protective factors around teens and being a strong support. I know, Estelle, there was a part of your story, especially around the pregnancy, where pressure from your family, made things more difficult for you.
Yes, totally. And we were from a small town. So when I became pregnant, my father basically said, you're going to get married because this doesn't look right. And so we did. We got married. And I don't think either one of us, like, even on our wedding day, he stayed with his parents and I stayed with my parents. But we were married in every sense of the word. But yes, the pressure's on. But like you said, the victim doesn't realize that this is what's going on and trying to convey to the people around her as a teen is like you said, it's young love, they're not going to last, so I totally understand.
Did any adults in your life, were they aware of the pressure and ultimately how this evolved into a physically abusive relationship? Were they aware that this was happening to you?
No, they weren't, because I did not disclose to them because I came from an abusive family. So my father was an abuser. And so it was prevalent and no one knew about the abuse until we divorced. No one.
And that's a common experience for survivors because, whether you're a teen or even an adult, you fear the judgment from other people. Or if this has been normalized in generations of your family, then you have the pressure of, well, why are you the one making waves? And the reality is that no one deserves violence in their relationship. And we have more tools and resources now than we did a generation ago. And so we encourage survivors who are listening to realize that no matter their upbringing, no matter the pressure that they face around them, they deserve to be safe. And that's where we're here to help.
A question from Susan on Facebook. She says, is this taught in health class in school? Do the guests get invited to speak at schools?
So Hubbard House actually has a really active primary prevention program where we will go out to after-school programs and youth groups and social clubs and teach age-appropriate lessons. Because even at a young age, if we're talking to you about anti-bullying, we're going to help you start to think about interpersonal relationships. With high schoolers, we'll talk about healthy relationship skills and nonviolent conflict resolution. And we do that education for free. It is in partnership with the schools. They have their own curriculum that they work, but we're there to wrap around and educate the youth as well as adults, because it's not just about helping teens understand what a healthy relationship looks like. It's also about helping the adults in the lives of teens understand how to be an effective support.
What you talked about, there's more resources now than ever, and that's true. There are also some challenges that I think none of us could have anticipated when it comes to the impact of things like communication through social media and how that can become a dominant factor in a relationship or a means of control or a means of threatening someone.
Yeah. One of the things that youth nowadays do, and really families will do, is share locations. For example, many people in my professional circle even will share their location with their family members. And a lot of the teens that I know have location shared with their friends. It's something that's normalized in a way. And if you are in a healthy situation, then, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a partner who's demanding to see your location, then they can have access to you wherever you are. And because it's so normalized, maybe if you say, well, I don't want to share my location, what are those friends going to say? Oh, you're overreacting. Or why aren't you giving this to him? So again, it's not only the new tools that an abuser can manipulate, but also how it's responded to. But I do want to make clear that while technology opens some of those risks, it can also be a huge protective factor. The community that a teen has on social media, the ability to share their location if maybe they're going somewhere they're not sure is safe. There are a lot of benefits as well. What we encourage teens to do if they feel like they may be in an unsafe situation is reach out to us, because we're able to safety plan with them, to talk about the technology that they use. What are the vulnerabilities? How can we leverage it? And all of the other factors around them to try to help them plan for their safety.
Estelle, was there a moment that you sort of recognized that the relationship you were in was so unbalanced? Did that occur before it became a physically violent relationship?
I don't think so. No, I don't think it did, because you don't, at as a survivor, you don't know that abuse is not physical. So abuse is mental, emotionally, I mean, even economically, but you don't know that it's not, you don't know it's abuse unless you're being physically abused. So I didn't recognize it as abuse until the physical started. And so I can honestly say that I did not recognize it as abuse.
And that abuse began after you moved away from the town you were from. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
After your child was born?
After my child was born, I'm 17, 18, and I'm in California. And, you're away from home, you're away from people that you know. So now you're really isolated. And then the physical, then you realize that now it all goes together. Now it's like a puzzle piece. So that was part of that, and this is part of this. So now all of it becomes abuse, and you are isolated. And at that time, there was no cell phones. It was a landline. So if you don't have a landline, you can't reach out. So we didn't have a landline for months when we moved. And so it was hard, it was challenging, and that you're unable to leave because you're new to the city, and I was raised in a rural area. I didn't even know how to use a city bus. So I'm really isolated.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've got a call from Mark on the west side. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's hypothetically say I have a teenage daughter. God give me strength. And I find out from one way or the other she has an abusive boyfriend. She's in an abusive relationship. So, the first thing I'm going to want to do is say, well, you can't see this guy ever again, which, of course, drives her further away from me and into his arms. So what do I do?
I mean, first of all, you have confidence that she was willing to come to you, because building that trust with your teens, it's not a foregone conclusion that they would come to their parent or that you would see the signs and they would be willing to talk to you. So I want to, first of all, commend you for that. And for anyone who is not sure their teen would come forward, work on building that trust. And we do that by trying to empower them to make their own choices whenever possible. To your point of, okay, we know that this is an unsafe situation. Just like you said, what kind of a teen is going to instantly listen to what their parent has to say? But especially, we can't downplay the influence of that abusive partner. They're going to help create the aura of us against the world. They're going to bring that teen further into their bubble. And so what we can do is talk to our child about how we want to help them be safer. And so it's not about you have to leave. It's about, well, the next time you're with him, can you share your location with me? Can we set an expectation for when you're going to be home so that if you're not home at that time, maybe I know something's gone wrong? Are there different steps that we can take to try to promote your safety while you're in that relationship? But also, how can I, as the adult, help you understand why I feel this is unsafe? Because especially if it's not physical yet, again, that teen may not realize. So many survivors that we work with do not realize all of the types of abuse that they endure until an advocate sits with them and shows them some of the categories and talks to them about the tactics. And so speaking openly to your teen about the specific things that you see that make you worry. I've noticed that when your boyfriend calls, you will stop the conversation and go answer right away, and you seem really nervous if you can't answer the call right away. That to me shows that he may be too controlling. And the fact that you worry if you can't answer his call, that makes me worried about your safety.
Are there opportunities for parents who have questions, or for teens who might have questions about the nature of the relationship that they're in, to come to something like Hubbard House before there actually is like a physical? Are you able to advise them if they just have questions?
Absolutely. And, so some of the examples I just gave are what we call safety planning. And that is the core of what we do with any survivor of all ages. And so we do have a 24-hour hotline. I know numbers are a little bit tricky on the radio. You can go to hubbardhouse.org to see the hotline number. But in case anybody's listening, it is 904-354-3114. If you call that free, confidential 24-hour hotline, we're able to start with some of those suggestions right away. We can talk to you about how do you navigate the conversation with your teen? What are some of those things that you can start thinking of even now? Maybe your teen is willing to talk to an advocate as well. Then you can even come to our outreach center. Coming to Hubbard House for help doesn't have to mean coming to shelter. We do have that outreach center. And so you and that teen can come and talk a little bit about the situation, help them understand better why we're worried about their safety, and hopefully start to put those steps in place where, alongside the parent as a support, we can find that safer future.
Estelle, can you talk about when you were, describe being isolated? I believe your husband was serving in the military.
In the Navy.
In the Navy. Did you ever call police when the physical abuse started? Did you ever involve authorities?
I never involved in authorities because of the fact that he was in the Navy, and I was actually told by him, if I called, think of what would happen after that. Then the commanding, his base would know, his commander would know, and he would probably lose his job. And then I felt bad. You almost feel guilty that if that happens, oh my gosh, I'm ruining your career. Oh no, I won't do that, because number one, you're the breadwinner. Even though I had a job, you're making more. You're supplying all the needs of the house. So no, I never did. I never, ever, ever called.
And you at some point had a second child.
Yes.
So were the children witness to some of this violence? How were they impacted, if at all?
They never witnessed the abuse. And he made it to where it happened at night. It never happened during the day unless they were at daycare. but they never ever witnessed the abuse. And I thank God for that, that it never was. And later as adults, they found, um, he admitted to them when they became adults. So
What enabled you eventually to break free of this relationship? I mean, this was really someone you dated essentially since like ninth grade on, right?
yes, exactly. So, what eventually, and I didn't have the pleasure of being, having Hubbard House. I had my faith. I had my faith, and I eventually trusted a few people to make a tribe so that I can have some type of safety and have a plan. So, and it was people in a church that I had became familiar with and built a relationship with that eventually helped me and to leave. And it was my faith. It was, yeah.
You were able to eventually talk to those people, though, about what was happening to you?
Yes.
And was that difficult?
Very, very, because I felt like they would judge me. And how could you allow this to happen? Because I would say that to people when I was a teen, and I had a family member that was abusive, and I would say as a teen, there is, how could you allow that person to do that to you? So when I became that person, I was like, so I'll judge them. So they're going to judge me. And I would actually defend my abuser to them. Like, no, that's not happening to me. Are you serious? But eventually there were people that I did allow to know my story. And it was a huge help.
Were there some signs that were visible to other people of the abuse that was occurring, or was it mostly hidden?
It was, yes, it was. It was open. They saw it. And I actually told them, this is not what you're seeing. Nope. And I'd wear makeup, and I never wear makeup, so they would notice at work. And so, yeah, I would defend it. Like, I'm not that type of person. How can you think that I would allow somebody to do that?
And what this really underscores is how important it is for a survivor to have someone in their corner
Yes.
that will believe them without judgment.
Yes. Yes.
Because there is so much fear from the manipulation that's taken place. And there's also real fear of how that abuser is going to respond
Yes.
if you try to leave the relationship. And so it is really scary and difficult for a survivor to reach out, whether it's to Hubbard House, to a friend, to a family member. And so being that support that the survivor needs in that moment means that we tell them we care about their safety. We offer to be a support for them as they figure out what is best and safest for themselves. And we believe them without judgment.
Yes.
In terms of, pressures, I know that there are also sometimes people who feel that because they're a professional, they wouldn't want to admit to something like that, or because their spouse is a prominent person, or somebody that's, in the military whose livelihood and whose reputation could be seriously impacted. There is additional reluctance for them to even speak to friends about it. How do you encourage them to break that silence?
It's about knowing the truth of their situation. And so the first thing I want to emphasize is that it's not just the societal pressure, it's the abuser manipulating the situation. They're telling that survivor, who do you think's going to believe you if you come forward? Or are you really going to ruin my career, right? So it's not just this passive thing. The abuser is actively manipulating the situation and that survivor. And so we remind the survivor of the truth of their experience. We help them understand that no one deserves violence in the home. And we help them plan for what those next steps could look like.
I want to ask you about that, because is it okay for someone to, be talking about these things that are happening without at all being prepared to leave?
Absolutely. Hubbard House is never going to make a survivor leave a relationship. Our goal is for you to be safer. And so you may not be ready to leave yet. Or you may have left before and the abuser found you. And now you're worried if you try to leave again, it's going to get even worse. There's so many reasons that a survivor may not feel ready to leave the relationship. And so if we were to say, no, you have to leave to use our services, all we'd be doing is exiling those survivors. So we don't come with any expectation. In fact, during the first time you sit with an advocate, one of the things we do is talk with you about the goals that you want to set for working with us. Because if your focus is securing childcare so that you can get a job, but all we talk about is housing, that's not meeting your true need that you've identified and you know your situation best. And so we work with the survivor to learn what are your goals and how can we help you achieve them in a safe way.
Estelle, looking back now with the advantage of time and experience, is there something that you could have told your ninth grade self or that you would tell a teenager today that is experiencing some of those red flags?
Yes. So if I could talk to my ninth grade self, your self-esteem, a feeling of self is number one. You have to make yourself get up and be confident in who you are. And you have to know who you are, your identity, because someone will see that and try to manipulate you into who they think you should be. Whether if it's a best friend, or a guy, and they can see it because you want to be what they want you to be. So as my ninth grade self, I would say, be who you are meant to be. You have to know and you have to feel it. Yeah.
And we also want them to trust their gut.
And trust your gut.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Estelle, thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you for having
and I'm
me.
glad where you are in your life today. Stephanie Brown, thanks so much for coming in. We have links to Hubbard House on our website, and you can find much more information there. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, up next, the author and host of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour.
An influencer and a kind of a dating coach setting her up on 20 blind dates, helping her try to find someone. And she is just starting this project, both professionally and personally, when she starts running into this guy who she just meets randomly on her own. So it's a little bit about her balancing the dating project that she's officially doing with the guy that she's kind of unofficially met.
Oh, wow. That sounds like plenty of room for intrigue. Is this based on your own experiences working in the podcast space?
I think some of the production stuff is certainly informed by my experiences and the producers and editors that I have worked with. I personally work more in hosting, and so I'm really borrowing knowledge that I've gained from producers and editors when it comes to what Cecily's actual job is. But certainly it's informed by my experiences in audio, yeah.
So I said this is your third novel. You actually, though, initially began professionally as an attorney. Is that right?
That is correct. I was an attorney.
What got you leaping from that world to this world that you're in, hosting Pop Culture Happy Hour, writing books?
So the thing I loved about being an attorney was writing. I loved writing. I've always been a writer. And I started writing on the side while I was still a lawyer. I started writing recaps of television on the internet for a celebrated, I will say, site called Television Without Pity. And I did that for a while. And eventually I decided to abandon my legal job. And I got a job at NPR writing a blog about pop culture. And then we started the podcast a couple years later. So it's really been a kind of it's been a bumpy but interesting road. And I think the through line has always been that I love to write in different settings and different formats.
So Pop Culture Happy Hour has been around now more than a decade, maybe as long as 15 years.
It's 15 almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really predates sort of the podcast boom that we all are kind of familiar with. And so it has this established foothold in that world and continues to be, really popular. But But for people who haven't listened, it's wide-ranging conversations. It's about movies and video games, music, television, and it's just you and your co-hosts, Aisha Harris, Stephen Thompson, and Glenn Weldon. How did you come up with that format?
Well, originally, Stephen and Glenn and I were three of the original hosts of the show. We had another host named Trey Graham, who was my editor at NPR at the time, who's not at the company anymore. But we started with just the four of us, and we started having conversations about primarily TV and movies. But as the show evolved, we sort of went away from having it be just us. And now in any given week, you're going to hear us, but you're also going to hear a wide variety of other critics and thinkers and writers and all kinds of interesting people, both inside and outside NPR. We have NPR, producers and editors who join us, and hosts who join us to talk about the TV and movies that they like, that they're interested in, but also a lot of outside critics, people who are critics for other outlets. And we just have such a great opportunity now to involve so many different people, and it's really been very rewarding to make that shift.
This is one of those topics that there really is no shortage of material for. I mean, I'm almost curious how you're able to winnow down. There's so much out there to absorb in the world of pop culture. How do you find a focus? How do you narrow down what you're going to talk about?
We all sit down with our producers and we talk about which of these TV shows and movies and things like that do we think the audience is going to be curious about? Which do we think we are going to have something to say about? Which are the things that we think we can help people discover that they might not otherwise discover? So we try to make it a mix of big projects, small projects, higher profile stuff, lower profile stuff, because you're always trying to balance helping the audience with discovery and also serving the needs that the audience has and their curiosity about things that they already do know about.
How do you stay current, though? I feel like you must be consuming, movies, videos, everything all the time just to try to even keep pace.
Well, this is the question. I mean, I think the answer, fortunately, is that I don't have to watch everything because there are, four hosts and a bunch of producers and other people who help us sift through all of it. I don't see everything. And every year when the Oscars or the Emmys or whatever come around, I go back and catch up on a bunch of stuff that I didn't see because I wasn't covering it. Because even if we cover a movie, I don't necessarily see it because if I'm not on that episode, maybe I don't see it. So the answer is, fortunately, I don't have to, but there is a tremendous amount of sorting through stuff and seeing things that you watch some of and then you say, this is not for me. I'm not particularly interested in this. But it's a group effort to try to stay on top of as much as we can.
The conversations that you all have are so lively, they're authentic, they're very natural, but they're so clean. I mean, as a host of a program myself, I find myself always having verbal crutches and pauses, and you guys just have this amazing conversation that just seems so dynamic and unstilted.
I would love to take credit for that, but I absolutely will not. That is Jessica Reedy, Mike Katzeff, Hafsa Fatima, and Liz Metzger, who are our regular producers. They do the production. They take out little things that go nowhere. They take out little pauses and stumbles. They make us sound much, much smoother than we actually are. And what that allows is the conversation, as you say, comes out pretty cleanly, but we're able in the moment to be having a discussion that's pretty freewheeling because we know they're going to come in later and kind of help take out the parts that people don't need to hear. So that is all production. That is the great effort that goes into it by our wonderful producers.
Well, it is a great listen. How does your podcast, do you think, fit into the consumption patterns in the current world? You are certainly kind of a palate cleanser for people who are sick of bad news, political news. How do you see yourself in that podcast ecosystem?
So the way I've explained this in the past is if you've ever seen the movie The Martian, Matt Damon is stuck on Mars and he's trying to get back to Earth, and it's a very big and very difficult job. And he spends a lot of time on Mars trying to figure out how to grow potatoes. And the potatoes are not going to help him get back to Earth. That is not the actual solution to the problem, but he has to live long enough to solve the problem. So my feeling is things like books, maybe a TV show that you love, maybe a movie that you love. These are things that help people stay connected to themselves and connected to their friends. They help people endure so that when they are going through things that are really difficult and scary, you gotta take care of yourself, and you gotta live long enough, and you gotta make it. Your first job every day is to make it, right? And if a book or a movie helps you make it, helps you take a moment and take a breath, then I think that's very worth doing. And that's kind of the way that I think about my own consumption of art and entertainment during times when things are really difficult.
These are the potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Space potatoes correspondent. That's how I sometimes describe myself.
Space potato correspondent. Do you have a favorite podcast? Do you even have time to listen to podcasts?
I do listen to podcasts. I have multiple favorite podcasts. I really love a podcast called Judge John Hodgman, which is about it's Hodgman, and he solves basic disputes between people. It's really fun and funny. The other one I listen to a lot right now is called The Flop House, and they go and they watch movies that either are critical or commercial flops, and they analyze them and talk about maybe why they didn't work. But mostly it's very funny. It's just a bunch of very funny people talking. So that's the kind of stuff that I gravitate toward. I listen to some like very serious podcasts, but I also listen to kind of chatty ones where I feel like I'm hanging around with smart, fun people.
Yeah. And in addition to all of the work that you're doing, I mean, how is it that you were able to carve out time to write your third novel?
It's difficult. I mean, fortunately, NPR has been very helpful in that they allow me to take some time away from work, and sometimes I do it that way. Sometimes I write at night or early in the morning or on weekends, but it is a lot, particularly when I'm in that process of putting together the first draft of something. It is definitely challenging, and it's something that I have to balance and try to make time for. So it's not easy, but it's been possible because of sort of the amount of support that I've had. But yeah, it's not simple. It's not simple.
Well, she is the host of Pop Culture Happy Hour. She's the author of her third
in Jacksonville. Curated art from ancient times to the present. Explore galleries, enjoy refreshments and entrees at the cafe, and treasures in the museum shop. More at cummermuseum.org. Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Car accidents happen too often for your family to go unprotected. Uninsured motorist insurance. When you need it, will you have it?
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
The Jacksonville Music Experience presents Psych Soul Band Ghost Funk Orchestra performing live on the WJCT soundstage on Friday, May 2nd at 7 p.m. Tickets and more information at jacksmusic.org/JME events.
President Trump is promising to end the now 3-year
Welcome back. Well, whether it's computing or daydreaming, there are a lot of stories to be found in the cloud. And that's the theme of the upcoming edition of Untold Stories, the series at the Florida Theater. Here to tell us about the cloud stories on that theme is the artistic director and host of Untold Stories, Barbara Colacello. Welcome, Babs.
Morning.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's a cloudy day.
It is a cloudy day. We're also joined by Young Quintero, one of the featured storytellers from season 1 of Untold Stories. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Barbara, you have hosted now all 4 seasons of Untold Stories. How did you get into the business of storytelling?
It all started when I was 5. It's just something that in college, when I started acting a lot, I just always gravitated to monologues. And like I'd always I just always saw the power of when people were together and someone started telling a story, everything got quiet. I saw that throughout my life. And not only with me, but other people telling a story. You really got to know something about somebody. And so when I finally had my own space, Bab's Lab, I said that's going to be my niche because it can't compete with musical theater and community theater, but I can work on communication skills, how to tell the best story possible.
So, Young, you were on the first storyteller seasons of Untold Stories. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, first of all, I have to say thank you, Barb. Barbara showed me the power of storytelling, and since then, I became a storyteller actually, and I do it often these days. My story was about my life. And the group that I was, the theme was there and back again, and that brought me to my youth years and how the whole process and how now I feel closer to my 17th than I ever been. And so yeah, there's a lot of power on remembering and crafting a story so people can actually be there with you when you're telling it.
You're originally from Caracas?
Yes.
Yeah. And so now you're in Jacksonville. Your story, though, also included a really scary diagnosis as a young man.
Yes. My story includes political turmoil, cancer diagnosis, plant medicine journeys, and yeah, and how a non-alcoholic bar came to life.
Right. Well, because we should say you're the owner of Wildcrafters, which is
Woo, woo.
a NA bar here in Jacksonville. Very, classy, high-end joint where you can go and enjoy craft non-cocktails.
Correct. Well, they're actually non-alcoholic cocktails, but nevertheless cocktails for sure. Yeah, that's what I've been doing in the last 5 years, and I think this whole story developed what it's now my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Barbara, this upcoming week said the theme that is you did the wave in the fall,
Right.
and now we're at cloud.
Cloud, followed by trail and route. This year, when I picked the themes, they're all nouns and verbs. And I just meditated on Jacksonville, and that's what came to me.
Can you give us a sense of what kinds of themes, what sort of stories you're seeing arise out of that prompt, out of cloud for this upcoming?
Well, the idea that behind a cloud there's shine, people moving from the light into the dark, back into the light. One of my storytellers is really covering every single definition of cloud in his story. Does it wonderfully. Um, we don't have that. We don't have cloudy thinking. You
Mm.
know, well, I'll be that.
Right.
I'm
And
in a fog.
the show is on Thursday, and I'm guessing this is kind of like the last minute. You're really hustling to get
Yes,
everybody.
make sure everyone's in in time. Time is significant at this point. But being clear and physical, we've really been staging it. It has to be embodied storytelling. I like that we're not just standing behind a mic. We have the wireless so they can move around. We have some dancing. I mean, we have talented storytellers, and we have great Mike Burners and Hannah Barrow doing the music.
Because you always have sort of a musical element.
Yes.
So
Yes, weave
they're
throughout.
and are they singing? Are they playing in the
Yes,
background?
Hannah is singing. She's a violinist with a beautiful voice. And they start off the second act. Um,
Yeah.
I listening to Jan reminds me of how someone has a story, and then when we start talking, we discover you just never know. Like people will tell you stuff, and you're like, "Oh wait, I," you know. We just walk around and we have no idea what other people their struggles and their joys.
Yeah, it's
really
a
cool
voyage of
process.
discovery.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it is so nice to meet you for the first time, Young. I'm glad that you were able to be here, Babs. Congrats on the new season, the middle of the new season of Untold Stories. It's Thursday at the Florida Theater, and you can get tickets at floridatheater.com.
And they can hear Jan's story on your podcast, Untold Stories
That's
podcast.
WJCT.org. That's
Yeah.
right. All right. Barbara Colacello, Young Quintero, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for listening.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.